Hey food fans, welcome to Cooking Like a Pro with Chef Cal and me, Mrs. Chef, his wife Christa DeMercurio. We're dishing out culinary intuition, insights, and imagination to spice up your meals and make cooking more fun. On today's episode, my chef husband and I discuss Seacuterie boards and transitioning our holiday menus from turkey on Thanksgiving now to prime rib and ham for Christmas. Let's dig in. Today's episode was broadcast and recorded live on AM/FM radio.
Welcome to Cooking Like a Pro. You have found us, Chef Cal, with my beautiful wife, Mrs. Chef Christa.
Good evening. Hello.
And we are just excited again to be here. The holidays are here. They are amongst us. And last week I mentioned something, and this is all going to be mostly holiday kind of stuff, except there's one thing that's bugging me I'm going to talk about. But as far as the holiday and people bringing food, you're going to other people's houses, you're bringing things like, maybe relish trays or meat and cheese platters. When you put those in a combination together with crackers, a lot of times they'll use the term charcuterie for that. But it's just really just food that can sit out, and it's a finger food. People can kind of munch. We used to use the term graze.
Well, they have grazing tables now where they will do a charcuterie across an entire table. It's called a grazing table.
Grazing table. Yeah, it's like a cow. You're grazing. But anyway, Seacuterie. Seacuterie was something that I'd mentioned the term last week, so I wanted to follow up on that. And basically, it's just kind of imagine the same thing with a charcuterie platter, except instead of your dried meats, you're going to have a variety of fish. You can have smoked fish, poached shrimp, fresh oysters. If you have seafood that needs to be iced, then have some crushed ice you can put down, keep it nice and cool. Caviar is a good thing. Matter of fact, we actually had something real similar to this charcuterie down in Monterey for our anniversary of a few weeks ago.
Yeah, they have these Seacuterie towers. I'm trying to remember what they called it down in Monterey.
Yeah, and I loved it because we did this once at one of my restaurants where we use a lot of the dry ice. So it creates that smoke. So when they deliver this, platter of, chilled seafoods, or you've just got this wonderful, wonderful presentation with the fog coming out, and it matches.
We actually have that picture online. It is the cover picture of our Monterey trip. We did a special Monterey
We'll go to
podcast.
Culinarily Yours and check it out yourself. Another thing is tuna tartare. It's a great dish that we've done a lot of, and it's really simple. But you want to get high grade. Well, anything that you're doing for these charcuterie platters, you really want to be high grade.
Okay, so first off, tuna. We're not talking tuna from a can.
No, that could be used in some sorts.
But you're talking tuna tartare. You're talking
fresh raw tuna.
But it has to be a certain grade. Yeah,
well, you just want to get a grade A. You want to get something that you trust. One of the best ways to get tuna, I'll tell you folks, is to get it already frozen. Because when it's frozen, then it's very likely it was frozen on the ship, portioned and frozen on the ship. So it's going to be less time out of the water. Up to the frozen point. And you can get it. They do add some coloring to it. If you've seen
it's usually kind of a red color.
But there's a lot of things you can do, and I know it's just a great start. And I've been blessed to have gone to the French Laundry in Napa. When you walk into the restaurant at French Laundry, the first thing they do is they bring you up a glass of champagne, and you're still standing there. I mean, you haven't even sat down yet, and they even can suggest you want to walk around the rose garden, or you can take a break anytime you want. And you can see the kitchen. The whole kitchen's all windows. But he makes this little salmon cornet. So he hands you this little, basically it's 2-bite, maybe even one for me. But it's called a amuse-bouche. So it's just really the 1-bite French. Something to just kind of tickle your tongue.
Is that the one that he does the little twill that he turns into a cone?
Yep, turns him into a cone. And this cornet is a small little, looks like a little baby ice cream cone, maybe 1.5 inches high, little cone. It's nice and crisp, and it's filled with a mixture of raw and salmon with beautiful olive oil, a little bit of lemon juice, and some chives. And you just take one bite, and underneath it is a creme fraiche with shallots. And it's just, you could sit there and think, man, I could eat, 40 of these. But anyway, that's how you start off. You want to, tempt the palate and get people ready for the experience.
Well, so if someone wants to do a Seacuterie board for a holiday party coming up, what would they do? Where would they go? What would they grab?
Well, things like, everything first off would be cooked except for maybe oysters. So you'd have the shrimp and maybe smoked salmon if you want caviar, tuna, sardines is another good one. And then you'd have your accompaniments for seafood, which would be lemon, capers, maybe some cheeses, but olives, crackers, wontons, different relishes and spreads. And some that people would just make like little bite-sized, little thing. Marinated vegetables is always nice. Something with acid to kind of cleanse the palate.
Well, I learned something new, a mignonette sauce.
Yeah, mignonette, very nice. It's just a kind of a vinegar sauce, a little touch of red wine and shallots. Yeah, yeah, and that goes great, especially on oysters. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. But yes, Seacuterie, something you can try, something you can play with, and we are going to be back in just a moment. All right, welcome back to Cooking Like a Pro again. Chef Cal and Mrs. Chef Christa here. And, I've been wanting to talk about this because it's been on my heart, and I've researched some of this lately. But knowing that food coloring can be bad for you. And one of the things that you'll notice when you dig into this is that when you go to a country that doesn't have all the regulations that we have here, and what they'll do is they'll take like carrots and use that for the orange color, or perhaps they'll take beet juice and use that. So or turmeric. So they'll use natural ingredients to do that. Well, unfortunately, in the United States, there's a variety of things that you'll find in a variety of products. And I guess the whole point, folks, is just listen, read the label. If you need to listen to, instructions on things, on maybe more details on the dangers, go ahead and do that. But you need to read the label. See what's on there. And I generally go by the fact that if I can't pronounce it, I'm not going to eat it.
I actually sent you a text. Did you read that? I sent you earlier.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
What things, things that were packaged, what the ingredients were in them about 25, 30 years ago, and now the ingredients that are in it's a totally different list.
I think Cheerios had 4 ingredients, and then now it has 20 or something. But for a variety of reasons. One is the main word that we're looking at here is processed. So as these foods get processed, so many things get added to them, and might be anything from filling agents to preservatives. It goes coloring agents and that kind of thing. But
they'll go from cane sugar to high fructose corn syrup,
which is really if that's the one thing, folks, you really just want to stay away from. I know that ketchup is a big condiment, but high fructose corn syrup is really it's not good for you in any way. Even if you were to try to do fructose or something or some other type of sugar substitute. But when it comes to the colors, red dye number 40 is the main one that gets the rap, because the adverse effects on especially children, on activity and on their attendance, and it's been linked to ADHD and it's been linked to I believe even look at something like autism. I was talking to my mom and dad. I said, "Did you know anyone who was autistic when you were a kid?"
No.
I don't even know anyone that had that was allergic to anything. So something has happened, and what has happened is 2 things. One is that there are people in the back recesses of the corner and boardrooms that are trying to make food flat just more addictive. And that's what's caused the obesity crisis, and that's why we now have, we've always had pharmaceuticals kind of,
there's that, and they're trying to make them cheaper, and they're trying to make them last on the shelf longer, and real food does not do that.
Yeah. Well, red dye number 40 cannot be considered safe. It's and again, you have to ask the question, why is it different? Why is it banned in other areas of the world?
Okay, other countries don't
Canada,
have it. Yeah.
And then yellow number 5 and 6, it's been connected to asthma symptoms, so it's another thing to think about. Blue number 1 it causes hyperactivity, and you think about these kids and they're eating, these I don't want do brand names for the most part, but there, there's these items that are snack items that become real popular, and they're eating them, and they're just destroying their brains while they're doing it.
Well, and they use citric acid, which is okay. They use that to kind of give you that I want more addictive taste because you want to drink something with it and eat more and drink more. But then they add the colors for visibility and visual appeal. And
again, using dyes and things like that. And blue is interesting because, blue, like I mentioned, it's neurotoxicity, hyperactivity, and also allergic reactions. But blue is something, switching back to culinary, is a color that you never used in food. When we were competing, you would never use blue because
there's no blue food.
Well, there's no natural way to make a blue color. Even blueberries are purple, right?
Mm-hmm,
So there's no way to make a natural blue color. If something's blue, you probably want to eat it. It's not appetizing. You want to stay away from it. So that's kind of fake. So you just look at these things, read the labels, and find out. When you get into candies and sodas, you're really going to get hit with these things. Things like M&Ms and Skittles, Doritos, Cheetos, almost all of your sodas, whether it's Dr. Pepper, Pepsi, even things like Gatorade that they kind of come out with this facade that they're actually a healthier item, but they still, you gotta look at the ingredients. So maybe it has electrolytes, but does it have, yellow number 6 in it? Something that's gonna, maybe cause a challenge?
Well, here's a fascinating one. Cheese. Cheese is not yellow.
No.
They add dye to it.
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, that's why they have white cheddar, and then they add coloring to it, and you have what we call regular cheddar cheese. It's kind of got that, American cheese color to it. But I think condiments is another area. So we're going to talk about the colors of things and what's in the food. That's one thing I think we really need to look at as we try to live healthier lives and make more healthy choices. But just look at the labels, because even cancer and organ damage, fertility, genetic defects. There's a lot of things that have been linked into these things. And the thing is that they're alternatives, but these alternatives are going to cost a little more money. Well, I'd rather pay a little bit more for something that's not going to kill me, or damage me, or cause me to, to have concerns. And so while I'm going through these things, I'm looking at condiments, and different things that make healthy choices instead. Things like hummus, guacamole, yogurt, plain yogurt, Greek yogurt, when you start getting into other things that are added to it. And another thing I look at was balsamic. We do a balsamic reduction, just dip strawberries in it, and that's like a mind-boggling. I don't know when you first got a chance to try that, but I do know that you have an affinity for it.
We were first together. We did balsamic strawberries.
A couple of decades ago.
A couple of decades ago.
Yeah. It's just such a great combination. Now, so I'm looking at condiments, and I come across Heinz 57, and just as a point of interest, I guess, I always thought Heinz 57 meant that there were like 57 ingredients or spices in it. But it's not. It's the two people that invented it. It was a man and a woman, and her lucky number was 5, and his lucky number was 7.
Really?
Yeah, I always thought 57 ingredients.
Yeah.
Now, there can be a lot of ingredients. I picked up, I was waiting for something to be done in an appointment today, and they had some snack things laying over there, so I went and looked, and these are a little small cheese cracker, and there's 27 ingredients in it. 27. And but you know what I looked up here? The actual coloring ingredients are turmeric and something that's called annatto. Annatto. ANNATTO.
I thought that was almond.
Yeah. And so that's well, the fact is that it's natural. So I looked at some of the hot condiments. Tabasco is always going to be your your best bet. When you start getting into things like sriracha, sambo leek, when you get into these spicy chili sauces and garlic sauces, and most of them Asian, you just have to be careful with heartburn. You have to make sure you don't overindulge, because I'll be honest, I overindulged last night. Man, I woke up with this tummy ache. I got the sambo leek out, and when you get these flavors that are addictive and you put too much on it, and you don't think about it. But capsaicin, it can irritate the lining of your stomach. So if your stomach is, tough enough, I guess, or has been abused enough, or has been, you've eaten it enough where you can handle it, then,
Well, let's go back to some of the things that they use for coloring. So we've talked about turmeric for yellow, carrots for orange. The annatto, which I just looked up, is actually a spice.
Yeah.
Also called the achiote.
Yeah, it comes from the achiote tree. And then you also have beets. Beets are really easy to color. I mean, they color everything anyway. They color your hands. They color. In fact, the one way to do beets is you want to boil them whole until they're tender, fork tender or like a toothpick tender. And then you pull them out, and then just, with a pair of gloves, you just peel the outside off, and then you're ready with a perfect product. All you got to do is cut out however you want and roast them, saute them, reheat them however you want, season them however you want.
Just make sure you wear gloves.
Yeah. Well, one thing, I love beets, so I am a really big beet fan.
I love roasted beets.
Yeah, those baby roasted ones are multicolored. Those are nice. But
so if we're looking at the labels and things do have coloring in them, we're finding more and more that some products are coming out that are considered natural. But what's interesting is they have less ingredients and they're more expensive.
Well, they're always going to generally be more expensive because there's more in the process. Because the reason they're using cheap stuff is because it is a much easier process. They're just, you don't need as many people because you're using cheaper stuff. But yeah, again, it goes back to looking at the label. And again, as I started off for this segment, if I don't understand it, if I don't recognize it, then I'm not going to eat it. Or at the very least, I'm going to look it up. And, now when I first started as a chef, we didn't have computers, let alone cell phones. But now we have this, computer in our hand that you can literally sit there in the grocery store, look at the back of the label. Make sure you give yourself a little more time when you go in the store, but look back at that label and say, okay, I don't know what that is, so take a look at it.
If you have to Google it, you probably shouldn't be eating it, though.
Yeah. And what is that one approved thing I was talking to you about?
Oh, Bobby approved.
Bobby approved. Yeah, you can actually take a pitch.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was unfamiliar with that, and my friend Rob showed me that. So it's a Bobby approved, meaning that it's what? Healthy?
So Bobby Parrish is on Instagram, and he analyzes all products and to make sure that they don't have any of these negative after effect ingredients in it.
I want that job.
And he's now got an app, and you can scan just about anything and find out if it's Bobby approved or not. If it's not approved, then it's got something in it that's either been modified, colored, etc. And if it is Bobby approved, then it's healthy for you and not considered something dangerous. Bobby Parrish, she's on Instagram.
So, all right, we're back at the bottom of another quick break, Cooking Like a Pro. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, welcome back. All right, so we talked about Thanksgiving, and one of the things with Christmas is it's almost kind of a duplicate when it comes to the meal and the menu. You wait all year, for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So you wait all year, and you finally get turkey, and then boom, you get it right when the leftovers are just being finished off. So there are a lot of other things people do. I think prime rib is something that's always a nice touch. Some people are a little bit, scared of getting a roast that might cost that much. I generally like to get my roast with the bone on it. Remember, prime rib has 12 bones, but you can get like a 6-bone roast, a 7-bone roast. They'll cut it however, thick you want it. But it's 12 bones all the way across. And, it's just something that is very traditional. It's something you can do a nice dry rub on. They got what we call the 500 rule. We cook prime rib really fast, and then slow it down. So start it fast and slow it down. But it's about 5 minutes per pound if you're cooking it really fast. But I usually sear my prime rib for maybe 15 minutes. So it's seasoned. It's got a dry rub on it.
And a quick sear.
Yeah. And then that 500 degree oven is going to get a quick sear, and then turn it down and just let it go to an internal temperature, or whatever it is that you want. You want medium. It's 130. 135, 125 is rare, and 130 is medium rare, and you start getting up to medium well, and then well done's 160, which not going to have a whole lot of flavor. To be honest, I'd probably buy it up, just a pot roast or something, or maybe like a round, and cook it if you're going to cook it that done. But in Europe, they used a lot of flying animals. I know that roasted goose. What's that Christmas carol where they get the roasted goose? Mm-hmm. Is that Ebenezer?
Yes.
Is that Scrooge? Okay. Yes. Yeah. They get the fatted goose. Ham has always been a favorite for mine. So,
can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
What is the difference between a crown rib roast and a prime rib? Is it the crown rib, the one that they got the little white hats? Yeah,
a crown. What they do with the crown is they'll take the ribs and they'll do a slice in between each rib, and a crown just means that they want to look like a crown.
Is it the same cut?
So yeah, it's the same piece, and they roll it. Like rack of lamb is something that they crown a lot because it's just much easier to crown. But you have to cut it, and I think the more you cut it, the more opportunity to lose moisture, juice, flavor, all that kind of stuff.
And then you got to put the little paper hats.
Little paper hats, yeah. We used to when I started out in the business, we used to use little paper hats on our roasts like that, especially with the lamb, and they kind of use it as so you can grab the bone and you can grab the little paper chef hat on the bone, so you don't get your hands greasy or dirty or anything like that, But yeah, Black Forest was fun. I got a chance to go there and see some pretty cool things. So
a Black Forest ham here. Yeah. What's the difference between a regular ham and a Black Forest ham?
Well, if you go back in history, the Black Forest ham had it always has a dark coating on it. Mm-hmm. Now a lot of times that coating is seasonings and spices. And I would check to see what that is. Originally it was they used beer. No, it wasn't beer. I'm sorry, it was blood. Yeah. So they put beef blood on the outside of the ham. It would cook it. It would actually give it a fairly distinctive flavor. But the ham these days, if you say Black Forest ham, chances are it did not come from Black Forest. Probably came from, I don't know, Virginia or something like that. And but it's not going to have that black coating on the outside. You need to look at the label and see what that is. Okay, most of the time it's spices.
Speaking of ham, yes. What's your thoughts on these spiral sliced hams? So basically they're already spiral sliced before you heat it up.
Well, if you think about it, and you're right in heating it up, because you don't have to cook it. It's already been brined, which means it's already been cured. Black Forest ham is dry cured. Most other hams are wet cured. They're in a brine, a liquid bath.
And then there's honey ham.
Yeah. Which would have a honey additive to it to get the flavor. But when they do the spiral ham, the thing about that is it's already cut, so it's just much easier than getting a ham with a big old bone in it that you have to kind of work around. So a spiral ham sometimes will have a bone as well, but they just slice it mechanically and it's super thin and
it doesn't dry it out.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. I'm not a real fan of spiral ham because it can dry it out because the slices are so thin. Remember, ham you want to cook it slowly, and you just want to bring it up to heat. And hot is like 144, 145 degrees. All you want it is hot. You don't need to get it to 160, unless the ham's discoloring or something, which you wouldn't eat it anyway, unless you're trying to, kill bacteria. But no, you want ham just to get hot and keep it nice and moist. That's why I like this nice thick ham. Remember in the old days they used to have the canned hams? Mm-hmm, just always just super tender. That a lot of times they'll smoke those in a variety of different woods. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the last segment. But other things, if you want to get different, because you just had turkey for Thanksgiving and you want to try something different, how about an Italian Christmas meal? Like lasagna bolognese would be what they would go with. Bolognese is, it's got the cream and it's got the pepper flakes and it's got the sausage in it. And it's just great. Bolognese is one of my favorites, depending on, you could use it with penne pasta. You could do any kind of pasta. In this case, generally the Italians would celebrate with a lasagna. And then how about Mexican? What did we just do?
Tamales.
Tamales, lots of tamales.
And I had a venison tamale that was fantastic.
We must have, I don't know what we did. We did tamales for a long time. I think we did like 160 or something. But yeah, get a good masa, which is just your dried corn, and it's different than like cornmeal. Okay, it's ground a little finer than cornmeal. And then it gets soaked in kind of a lime water, and then it gets dried a second time. So the masa is going to have a little bit of flavor to it. But when I do my masa, I usually add lard, and then instead when it says add water, just add poultry stock or chicken stock, or maybe whatever stock of the flavor tamale you're going to do. Pork, use pork stock, but it's just going to bring more flavor in. Is one of the challenges with tamales when you get them is it's just all masa.
Not ours.
Yeah, I know. Ours look like that. Ours look like burritos. They might fall in the burrito category.
Now, if you don't want to make masa, a lot of times you can find a traditional Mexican restaurant or market that actually makes the masa that you can just go buy and pick it up.
That's where I got mine this year. I got mine there. I didn't have time to make it, and I just ordered it and picked up 30 pounds. Figure, that's going to be enough to make a couple hundred tamales. We had different flavors. There were different stuffings, I should say. We had pork, and we had some that we did were vegetarian with just Ortega chilies and
then something new we did this year is we steamed them in my new Instapot.
Yeah, that's the way to do it, and just make sure you're hitting steam.
Hit steam
on there, and it came out great. And
30 minutes.
Was it 30 minutes?
30 minutes steam from 30 minutes is the cook time. Instapots are not instant. There is a heat up time and there is a cool down time, and then there in the middle is the timing that they actually cook. So it was probably more like they were in there for an hour.
Yeah, but they're a quarter of the time or even less of something like a crock pot.
Yeah.
Because they're, they're pressurized. And boy, they just came out great. And that's the biggest challenge I have with tamales, other than the fact that they might have too much masa in them. I like to have some filling. But it's that they take a long time to steam.
Yeah. So I want to throw out to you, I didn't grow up having Christmas dinner. We would always celebrate on Christmas Eve, and we would always do the charcuterie platters, the vegetable platters, but we would have probably a minestrone and a stew or a chili. So your chili minestrone was very popular. Then Christmas Day would be more of a brunch. We wouldn't do Christmas dinner because in the morning, get up, open presents, have brunch, and then Christmas was over at that point.
Bacon and pancakes. I love it.
Or Eggs Benedict.
Yes. It's a great time to experiment. It's a great time to try something a little different. Again, there's a lot of things that are out there. Just, research it. Make sure you cook it the amount of time that it needs to be cooked. And enjoy, and even if you're going with primary, but you still do the potatoes and the gravy, stuffing. I mean, even cranberry sauce for that matter.
Waldorf salad.
Waldorf
salad.
What
I think of when I think Christmas.
It's Waldorf salad, apples, walnuts.
Apples, walnuts, celery.
Kind of a mayonnaise-based salad. It's bound. But
you should put a little honey in the mayonnaise, a little rice vinegar, a little honey.
Yeah, it was a great salad though. We got and actually invented at the Waldorf Astoria. Over there, where is that? I think
it's New York.
Must be New York. But anyway, so Christmas coming up. Enjoy yourself. Have a Merry Christmas. Have a wonderful time with family. That's really what the key is being able to spend some time with the family, just being reminded of memories and creating new ones.
And one more thing I could throw at you: Chinese food. Just go out for Chinese.
A lot of people do Chinese
on Christmas.
All right, it can be a little bit of a tradition there as well. But anyway, so we'll be back to talk a little bit about beef in this last section. So hang on for that. And Cooking Like a Pro is going to be back in just a moment. All right, welcome back. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We're Cooking Like a Pro. We got one more segment here. We want to talk about beef. I mean, we just talked about prime rib. A lot of different roasts you can do. But the seasoning, when you season them, what I'm recommending is doing for large roasts is doing a dry rub. I really don't like marinades or anything that's wet because it's going to keep the roast from browning and getting that golden sear on the outside. So I always add it, and you can add it, an hour ahead. I don't know that I'd necessarily do. Like overnight or anything, especially if there's salt in it, because remember salt's going to...
We talked about that, not a lot of salt.
Yeah, it's going to dehydrate, yep. But for when it comes to things like large meats, like, chuck roast and there's a variety of, bottom round, top round, the things that, from the front of that's from the back of the cow. From the front, you got the chuck, which has all kinds of different roasts and pot roasts and a variety of, the blade is there. There's a 7-bone pot roast. There's any number of things that you can get. So those are these meats that you're going to want to sear and then roast. Generally, you start off searing them at a high temp and then turn them down, let them go slow. Remember, when something cooks slow, it allows that connective tissue to melt. And when that melts, then, you just have the muscle fiber, so you have something that's tender. But you always have to still take off the silver skin. Now, you remember what the silver skin was?
It's the connective tissue, right?
It was remember we did a fillet, a tenderloin.
And it's actually it's a white with kind of a silvery blue tint to it.
And it just coats it's in between the large muscles. So you're going to have it on the outside of your different muscles. And so just need to trim that off. That would be extremely, extremely chewy.
Now, quick question. You talked about searing. Searing in an oven versus searing in a pan.
I think it's fine both ways. I think it's going to get more intense if you had a cast iron pan and you got it white hot or very hot or something, a heavy bottom, heavy metal, heavy stainless steel, and just seared it in there. Because one thing the searing does also is it locks in the flavor in the sense that because it is searing the outside, so it is forming a barrier so flavor and juice can't escape. And some people coat it with things. I've seen people coat with the strangest things. Mustard is a very popular one.
Oh, you do that for lamb. So can you do that on beef?
Yeah. Oh, well, you can do anything you want. Now it's going to come out, I don't know, but mustard is a popular one. But the thing is, you want the dry rub to stick to it. And if the meat's very wet, then that's different. But I would oil your meat and then hit it with your dry rub and then oil it again, because you want those seasonings to adhere to it. And another thing you don't want to do is you don't want to season like the top of a fat or a fat cap, or even like we talked about silver skin, because those seasonings are just going to melt right off the sides. They're not going to infiltrate into the meat itself. So
reminder of the fat cap, is that on the top or on the bottom?
Generally on the top, but it kind of depends on which direction you're looking at it. Most meats have fat, on one of the exteriors. But marinated again is just a little more difficult to brown. Cook them at a low temperature, low and slow. Get it nice and medium rare. Slice it thin. Slice it across the grain. If there's anything that you ever learn from me, slice it across the grain. Because remember, if you slice it with the grain and you have these long stringy pieces, now you've got beef-flavored bubble gum, right? Because it's just chewy. You want to slice it across the grain. So look at it. It's easy enough to tell which way the grain's going and slice across the grain.
Now, what type of
and
knife?
The grain doesn't always stay the same throughout the
That's
whole thing.
a great point, Ben. Great point. Our engineer just spoke up. But anyway, yes, you're very right. It does change, especially on things like tri-tip. It's kind of a pretty popular thing, where it's more than one muscle. And especially your sirloins, they're more than one muscle. Muscles go a different direction. You just got to be paying attention. And if you're cutting from one direction, from right to left, you might have to turn the roast. But just keep an eye on it. Make sure you're always going across the grain.
Okay, back to my question. What type of knife? A slicer knife? Which is the really long one?
Yeah, you definitely want a long knife. You want a slicer. You don't want something that's going to cause that's going to kind of chew through it. You ever seen something like a slice of meat? Here's a slice of meat, and it looks like they used a saw. Yeah, you want something very sharp. You want to make a nice sharp cut, because you want to keep all that moisture, because that's the juice and that's the flavor, and you want to keep that in the meat. And if you don't cut with something sharp, you are going to end up losing some of that.
Most slicers are, about 10 inches long? So they can get all the way across and through?
Probably closer to 12.
10 to 12?
Yeah, 10 to 12. Okay. But again, something super sharp and generally not serrated, for meats. Serrated is a knife that actually does have teeth on it, and you'd use that for cutting your breads and stuff like that. But you want this crisp on the outside. And sometimes you want to maybe smoke it for a bit. That's another good thing you can do. Add some chips. I generally don't use chips that are harsh. It's like mesquite can be harsh. Oak and hickory are definitely harsh. So when I cook things, like I have a recipe that I do that's smoked sea bass, and I want a really, really mild smoke on it.
So how would you do that? Would you take like a roasting pan, start burning the chips, and then put a lid on it really quick?
Yeah, I take a small handful of chips, and I'll usually use fruit. So it's applewood, cherrywood, peachwood off a tree. It's fairly small. I put it in a little bit of orange juice just to soften up the flavor and to keep it from being a harsh smoke. And then once it comes to smoke, you just put a perforated pan over the top of it, a lid or a piece of foil over that. Only takes just 3 or 4 minutes. Pull it off there, and because you don't want to over smoke it, but you're already using a lighter flavored wood. But then you can easily finish it in the oven if you need be. I mean, it's all going to depend on how thick your sea bass is. Sea bass can be a half-inch thick. It can be 3 inches thick. It depends on how it's cut, but you do want to get that just enough smoke to get that flavor, and then pull it out. That particular dish was actually served on we did it at the restaurant on a gorgonzola polenta, and it got a Roma tomato relish over top of it, and it was kind of a center of the plate presentation. It was popular.
You got smoky, creamy, acidic.
Yep, it's just very palatable. It all comes together. But anyway, so there's a variety of ways of being able to modify it. There's a ton of smokers out there, a ton of pellets that you can get that have flavor additives to them, whether it's from the meat product itself. Trying to get, better meat, something that's, going to be rated prime as opposed to choice. Prime would be higher than choice. Anytime you get Angus, you're better off. Angus just has more marbling. They feed the cattle grass, so they're grass fed, but then they'll give them grains towards the end, and that's what helps expand this marbling. So the marbling is the fat that's on the interior of the meat. And you'll get stuff that's crazy, like you start going into Wagyu, and then after that you go into Kobe. I mean, Kobe can be, like $600-700 a pound. I mean, it's literally ridiculous, but it's one of those things that, you might only have once in your whole life. But they do have some, again, you want to allow the meat to have fat in the inside. You can get that by two things. One, visually by looking at it, and two, just from whatever it's graded. Okay, it should be graded prime. It could be graded choice and still be fine. But look at it, and again, you want to see lines of fat inside the meat. Okay, not tendons and ligaments and those kind of things. You want to see fat, literal fat inside there. And if you don't know, then ask your butcher. That's what their job is, right? They should be able to tell you. And again, if you're doing a roast, you're probably going to be looking at a muscle that's a working muscle. So a roast is going to be kind of from the chuck of the animal. Like basically look at where the cow's legs are, from the front legs straight up and the back legs straight up. Front legs straight up, you go into the shank and the brisket, and then you get in most of its chuck. And in the back, it's all round. It's almost 30% of the actual meat you're going to use is going to come from the sirloin. And then in the middle, you've got the riding muscles, but those are going to be things that are going to be more tender, not going to have as much connective tissue. So you can use a dry cooking method. Saute it, pan sear it, char grill it. Any of those things works well. But just, again, you figure out your roast, and you can always just ask the butcher. You have to trust these people that they do it for a living. Say, I want to roast something, and for a family dinner, and I got 12 people coming over. I need something that I can just roast and get a nice medium rare out of it. And they're going to give you something that's going to hopefully be, work well. They want you to come back, right? So anyway, when it comes to beef, again, if you get the Wagyu and you go that far, Wagyu actually, you know what Wagyu stands for?
I do not.
Wa is Japanese and Gu is cow. So Wagyu just means translated Japanese cow.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they treat them like kings right up to the point where they eat them. It's food that's going to have a quality of meat that's really not going to have all the connective tissue because it doesn't really do much. It's kind of like the old days where we had veal. where the veal was the cows who were kept in small cages, so they didn't move much, so their meat didn't get connective tissue because it didn't run around, and it'd just be beautiful and tender and white. And it was.
What about basting? Do you baste roast like you do a turkey?
You can baste it with whatever the natural juices are. But I'd probably do it afterwards. I don't think I'd worry about basting throughout the product or throughout the process.
Because you want more of a crispy outer skin, right?
Yeah, and basting's going to change that.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. Until next time, we hope you'll be cooking up a storm in the kitchen. So we'll be with you again next week with food, flavor, and fun right here on Cooking Like a Pro podcast.